Adam Schefter. And if you're with us earlier in the program today, Schefter, you told us that last night's somewhat surprising loss by the Lions may have completely changed the way this year's coaching carousel works.
It sped up the entire cycle because the teams that are looking for head coaches, the Saints, the Jets, the Bears, the Raiders, and the Jaguars, I don't think they were expecting the Commanders to win, and for Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, the offensive and defensive coordinators of the Detroit Lions, to be in the mix, to be able to meet with teams starting tomorrow, and they can be hired as early as this week. And these two guys are expected to get head coaching jobs. I think with Ben Johnson, you're looking at the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chicago Bears, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, all square in the mix. And he's going to figure out, I think, this week where he wants to go. Aaron Glenn, square in the mix with the New Orleans Saints, the New York Jets, maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Raiders. Now you start to look for hints and clues about things that are happening. The Las Vegas Raiders today are interviewing the Commanders' assistant GM, Lance Newmark, who spent the previous 26 years in Detroit working with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. The Raiders could look to move on Lance Newmark, but Tom Brady also likes John Spytek, the Buccaneers' assistant GM. We'll see how that plays out. These two are the dominoes that have to fall before the other head coaches start to get hired, and I would expect that to start happening this week.
So accelerate the process is
Everything
what we're
got
hearing.
accelerated.
In the meantime, I only see 5 logos down here. There are 6 openings right now. The Dallas Cowboys are the 6th. What are we looking at?
They are in their own little category because it doesn't seem right now like they're in on the other candidates. Now, they could always call about Aaron Glenn. We'll see if they do. But to date, they've spoken with Kellen Moore. They've spoken with Robert Saleh. Leslie Frazier's coming up tomorrow. Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders spoken. Everybody's waiting to see about Jason Witten. And Anthony Lynn has a history with the organization and is running the run game in Washington that has been so effective. So the Dallas Cowboys, I think, are moving at their own pace, in their own universe, doing what they do, and we wait to see where that brings them. But it feels like the other 5 teams are in on the Lions coordinators, and the Cowboys are operating in their own universe.
Well, and obviously everyone is paying close attention to the Deion of it all. That's the one that stands out in all of this. He is a candidate quite unlike any of the other candidates that are available in this cycle. So should we dive into that? Alex, out of all of the candidates that we just heard involved in the Cowboys coaching search, which is the one that makes sense to you?
I mean, believe it or not, I think it's Deion, to be honest. I mean, listen, being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys is such a unique position to be in. And to hire a first-time head coach that isn't ready for that spotlight, I think is a mistake, right? I love Kellen Moore, but I don't know if he steps in right now. Jason Witten, I don't know if that's right. I mean, in some ways, obviously the history here with the Dallas Cowboys, Deion knows this culture. But I think, listen, he is such a presence as a head coach, right? I think he casts such a big shadow. In some ways, I think he protects this Dallas Cowboy locker room, right, that is so affected by this spotlight sometimes, right? They've had great regular seasons. Then when the stage gets bigger, we've seen them not perform. I think Deion, in some ways, there's brilliance to what he does, and that he takes a lot of that on and kind of lets his players, focus on football, right?
Yeah,
what they should be.
Yeah, I mean, also, so that's the same long lines as Jason Witten in terms of a former player that has a relationship with the owner that can translate it down to the players. I mean, is there even has Deion even been interviewed? Is this?
He doesn't need to interview Jerry.
Yeah, that's what
I think
that's
Jerry's got to
right,
decide, you know
right.
what, this is the direction I want to go. And then Deion would have to decide if that's the direction he wants to go. And I think Jerry would be out front leading the charge to go get Deion. And it's not like it's a primary purpose right at the outset right here. Like, they're going to wait on that one, do their process, and at some point in time, you just wait to see if Deion can just jump right in there if Jerry decides to go that route.
I'm just thinking about players, and I think Deion would be great for Micah.
He'd connect, yeah.
In terms of Micah, in terms of what how you talk the talk and also walk the walk. You know what I mean? In terms of, like, Micah's said some things, and you're getting into areas where you're talking other players' contracts and top 5 lists on quarterbacks, all of this stuff, and Deion started it all in terms of challenging teammates, talking through the media, challenging his team, his whole entire organization, talking trash the right way. Yep. I think Micah needs a force like Deion to help him progress.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would love for Deion to get a job here. He'd obviously have to bring in NFL assistant coaches and change up, the guys that he has in his current staff and things. But, I mean, nobody's going to sit back and look at, really? Like, what do you know? No, he's one of the greatest players in the history of our game. So they're going to have that natural respect. Watch out for Anthony Lynn. And I'm going to tell you, Anthony Lynn is a way better football coach than maybe people give him credit for. He did a really good job with the Chargers. And I think people forget that as a winning record as a head coach with the Chargers. And I'm just telling you, Jerry is going to be comfortable with him. He's been in that organization for a while. I think that's important. Anthony would know what he's getting into, and he is a dang leader of men. Some of these other guys I'm not so shot in the you-know-what with, but Anthony Lynn, I think, makes perfect sense here. He's an outstanding coach. I had the opportunity. He was with me for several years. I think he's one of the finest coaches in the NFL. We see the difference with that football team. It's not just Cliff Kingsbury. Anthony Lynn in charge of that run game, and believe me, they will play hard for Anthony Lynn.
Yeah, experienced. I think the last thing on Deion is, listen, I think when you get beyond a lot of the stuff and the PR moves, Deion's an old school coach, right? Like the things that he's about. And I think he would put together a professional staff. And again, I do think he could step in and connect with these players. And we know from a business perspective, this would be must-see TV.
But by the way, it would be a continuation also. We see Mike Vrabel going back to New England. We see Aaron Glenn in play in New York where he played and some of these places. And D'Amico Ryans is in Houston, another guy. So that would just be a continuous. Dan Campbell in Detroit. There seems to be a little bit of a trend of the player coach going back to a franchise. Yeah. And Deion will continue that. He'd be awesome. He'd be awesome.
I think we're seeing a lot of things. It's now more important to get leadership. Like that's where it should be. That's who the head coach should be. And to me, I think we're seeing that trend also more than just a hot corner, even though Ben Johnson obviously comes to the top of that. But I think he's going to be dang Bill Walsh. So I've said it before, and I still believe it. I think he's that good.